Hare Krishna. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss any updates.
Many times in these pages we have discussed the spiritual planets situated beyond the material sky. And the description is corroborated in this verse. The word Sanatana is significant. This very idea of eternity is expressed in the Bhagavad Gita. Where it is said that beyond the material creation is the spiritual sky, where everything is eternal. Sometimes Satyaloka, the planet in which Brahma resides, is also called Brahmaloka. But the Brahmaloka mentioned here is not the same as the Satyaloka planetary systems. This Brahmaloka is eternal, whereas the Satyaloka planetary system is not eternal. And to distinguish between the two, the adjective Sanatana has been used in this case. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this Brahmaloka is the loka or abode of Brahman, or the Supreme Lord. In the spiritual sky, all the planets are as good as the Lord Himself. The Lord is all spirit, and His name, fame, glories, qualities, pastimes, etc. are all non-different from Him, because He is absolute. As such, the planets in the kingdom of God are also non-different from Him. In those planets, there is no difference between the body and the soul. Nor is there any influence of time as we experience it in the material world. And in addition to there being no influence of time, the planets in Brahmaloka, due to being spiritual, are never annihilated. All variegatedness in the spiritual planets is also one with the Lord. And therefore, the Vedic aphorism, Ekam eva dvitiyam, is fully realized in that Sanatana atmosphere of spiritual variegatedness. This material world is only a shadow phantasmagoria of the spiritual kingdom of the Lord. And because it is a shadow, it is never eternal. The variegatedness in the material world of duality, spirit and matter, cannot be compared to that of the spiritual world. Because of a poor fund of knowledge, less intelligent persons sometimes mistake the conditions of the shadow world to be equivalent to those of the spiritual world. And thus they mistake the Lord and His pastimes in the material world to be one with the conditioned souls and their activities. The Lord condemns such less intelligent persons in the Bhagavad Gita. Avajananti ma mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhutam ahishwaram. Whenever the Lord incarnates, He does so in His full internal potency, Atmamaya. And less intelligent persons mistake Him to be one of the material creations. Srila Sridhar Swami, therefore, rightly commenting on this verse, says that the Brahmaloka mentioned here is Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God, which is Sanatana or eternal, and is therefore not exactly like the material creations described above. The Virat universal form of the Lord is an imagination for the material world. It has nothing to do with the spiritual world or the kingdom of God. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Satya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse today, we are further reading about the universal form, and it is said, Grivayam janaloko sya tapoloka stanadvaya. Stanadvayat, from the chest, from the breast. Stanadvayat, grivayam, up to the neck. Or janaloka and tapoloka. All of them associated here. Murdhavihi satyaloka. Murdhavihi, the head of universal form, is satyaloka. Brahmaloka sanatana. To Brahmaloka sanatana. And Brahmaloka is eternal. So, Prabhupada has clarified in the purport. Here this Brahmaloka is not referring to Loka of the Chaturmukha Brahma. This is the characteristic of Sanskrit language. If you want to understand the meaning, you have to take the help of the acharyas who are coming in that tradition. Otherwise we will all be confused. So, it's a very interesting way how Srila Prabhupada presents all the material world. Everything here in the material world is temporary. And parastasmat tu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana. Prabhupada is quoting that from the 8:20 in the Bhagavad Gita. And saying that Krishna has said that there is another world, parastasmat tu anya. Vyakta avyaktat sanatana. It is other than the Vyakta and Avyakta Jagat. The Jagat goes through, the material world goes through Vyakta phase, and it becomes withdrawn and it becomes Avyakta. It goes back into its fundamental material elements. And then again it is Vyakta and Avyakta. So this cycle, Bhutva, Bhutva, Praliyate, again and again this keeps happening. But apart from this, Parastasmat tu bhavonya, there is an anya bhavaha, there is another kind of an existence, which is sanatana. So Prabhupada has taken that explanation, and that's how the acharyas are all clarifying. Prabhupada has quoted Jiva Goswami, Sridhar Swami, and these are all very eminent commentators on the Bhagavatam, and he's quoting them, citing them, to say that this Brahmaloka is what is referred to here is not actually the material world, but Brahma's Loka, but it is not Satya Loka, but it is referring to the spiritual world, which is a Lokaha. It is a Lokaha. It is not just Brahman. There is a Brahma Lokaha. There is a planet. Brahmalokasana. So like this, we will need the help of the Shastras. We will need the help of the Acharyas' commentaries to make sense of the Vedic literatures. Otherwise, we will be very, very confused. So, and in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about the adjective Sanatana that is used here. And Sanatana, being eternal, Krishna helps us to understand the experience of Sanatana. Because we are also Sanatana. The Jiva, this life and living entity, is also Sanatana. And to help us understand that, Krishna explains, Dehinos minyata dehe kaumaram yavanam jara. To make us understand that, just see, Prabhupada also uses this example very nicely. We all have experience of being a small boy. Right? We were small boys. Your parents will have some picture of you holding like this. And you will say, that's me. Hey, come on, how can you do that? You're so tall now. No, only this much. So that body began to grow, and then we look like schoolboys, high school boys. Now, when we were high school boys, what happened to that baby body? That baby body is gone. Although the baby body is gone, we have survived beyond the baby body into a high school boy body. Correct? We all went through this. The same body. It was in another kind of a situation. And then the high school body also vanished, went away. Now we look like young man. Most of you, not me. And then after some time, the young man body also goes away. Becomes old man body and older body. But we have survived. That is why Krishna gives this example and says, Tata Deyantara Prapti. And hence, in the same way, when this old body also goes away, Deyantara Prapti, another body Prapti, we will receive. So, this is a glimpse of Sanatana existence of ourselves over changing bodies. We are the same person, we were experiencing all of this. We were the same observer. You go back to school days, your school classroom, you will see, oh, I used to run around here like this in the corridors. You may remember, you may not remember all details, but some faint recollection. And it always, there's a word in English, nostalgic. Right? We go back and we remember that, oh, nostalgic. This is the same place. So we are the same person. It is not a different person. If there is a different person, there is no nostalgia. Right? So, this is a glimpse of eternal existence that we get. And Krishna is helping us to understand that this is the way it is. See, the Vedic literatures help us to understand certain reality which otherwise we cannot see. That's why the Vedic literatures are described as prakashamanaha. Suppose in the middle of the night you come down the staircase and everything is, here anyway there's very little window and outside light. Right? How it will be? It will be pitch dark. You will be careful. You don't walk into something. And then you will feel for the electric switch somewhere on the wall. And hopefully you will find the switch and turn on, and suddenly you will see the hall. In the hall so many things are there. There is a bamboo stool, there is Prabhupada's altar, there is Tulsi Maharani, there is so many things are here. Pillars are there, fans are there, mats are there. You have the eyes to see. And there are objects to be seen. But if it is dark, you cannot see. You turn on the light, then you can see all this. This is the role of the Vedic literatures. They are prakasha. Just like light comes on and now you can see. If you are blind, even when there is light, even if there is sun in this room also, you cannot see anything. You have to have eyes, and there has to be objects, and there has to be light. Three things are required. Ability to see, objects to be seen, and light which will enable us to see. If either of the three, if our eyes are not there, objects are not there, our light is not there, we cannot see. That experience will not be there. So in the same way, in the human form of life, we have the ability to see. And there is something to be seen. So, all the spiritual realities, without the help of the light of the Shastra, we will be groping. We will not know. That is what is happening to all the philosophers. Philosophers coming up with various kinds of philosophy. They are missing because they are not taking the help of the light. That is why the examples, Upanishads give the example of 5 blind men. They suddenly came across something very huge, big thing. And they were walking 5 men. All of them were blind. And they suddenly came across something. And they touched that one. One man said, "Oh, I've come across one big pillar." Another man said, "Oh, no, you have come across a pillar. I've come across something that's moving. It's like a snake." You see? So all the 5 people were describing different things. They could not figure out they were in front of an elephant. Right? Because they cannot see. So in the same way, the scholars, philosophers, they're trying to figure out this world. In that limited, short experience, we cannot figure out. We need some other help. That is the whole point. So, Vedas provide that light of knowledge. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Ena. The spiritual master opens our eyes to see certain realities, otherwise we cannot see. Or, like Krishna explains, Jnana Deepena Bhasvata. With the light. And then, so what is this? The universal form has all these different planetary systems, even more than the planetary systems we can see. And beyond that, what is there? We cannot again know all that. It is Brahmalokas Sanatana. So in the Vedic literatures, this is Ekam Eva Dvitiyam. It is one of the famous statements in the Upanishads. Beyond this material world, in the material world it is a world of duality. There is 2 kinds of reality existence here. One is matter, and in its various forms, and there is the spirit. We can clearly experience that here. Spirit has consciousness, matter has no consciousness. These are 2 distinct categories of existence. That's why when Krishna explains Bhumirapo nalo vayuhu karma no buddhirevata, evacha ahankara mitiyam me bhinna prakriti rashtadha. After he says that this material world is composed of 8 elements, aparemitasva anyam prakritim viddhi me param. Apart from this, there is one more. Apart from the 8 elements, and that is the 9th element, the spirit. Aparemitasva anyam prakritim viddhi me param jiva bhuta mahabaho jiva bhuta mahabaho ehedam dhariyate jagat. So Krishna points out that there are 2, that's why Prabhupada is using here. This is known as the world of duality. This world of duality is described by Srila Prabhupada in different places in the Shastras in different ways. Here in this purport he is pointing out this is a world of duality because there are 2 distinct existences. There is matter and there is spirit. 2 distinct, anya, meaning one cannot come from the other. One is not a derivative or a combination of the one will result in the other. No, it will never result in the other. This is the mistake the scientists are making. Actually, Srila Prabhupada really gets to at the final thing, what is the difference, what the scientists are talking and what the Shastras are talking. Otherwise you can't even make out. There are many people, many religious people, scholars and all that. They don't have this clarity. Prabhupada said, life comes from life. Life cannot come from matter. You see, because this is anya. It is a different, another category. This category you combine in different ways, you will get this material world. You will never get the soul, the experiencer of all this material world. You will get kshetra. You will not get the kshetragna, the knower. So very nicely Prabhupada describes all these things. And now what is this beyond? The Vedic literature says, ekam eva advitiyam. There is only one advitiyam. It is not 2. See, there was one person, very strong Shaivite, very strong belief of Shiva. And I was explaining to him about how there is absolute truth, there is relative truth, and there is an absolute truth. And then I explained that absolute truth is Krishna, has a personality, and he is all attractive, and he is Krishna. Then he came up with the explanation. Why should there be only one absolute truth? Can there be 2? So that you can also be happy, I can also be happy. You are happy that Krishna is there, I should also be happy. You can accommodate each other, no? Shiva. For me, Shiva is the absolute truth. For you, Krishna is the absolute truth, maybe. And both of us can exist like that. So that was his hope. Nice man, very respectful to devotees and all that. And so then, this is the point. Ekam eva advitiyam. And that absolute truth is one. Advitiyam. Ekam eva advitiyam. There is no second in that absolute truth. There is only one. Now, when it is said that this is material world and there is something, this is dvandva, and there is a spiritual reality, and that spiritual reality is one. And that is Brahman. This is the first understanding. Next is, in that spiritual Brahman, is there variegatedness or not? Is the question. Are there varieties? Are there categories and classifications and all of that in that? Being one, it can be one and yet have classification, categories in it. being one. Again, all these things by speculation you cannot figure out. So the Vedic literatures point out that yes, it is ekam eva dvitiyam. But in that Brahman, there is variegatedness. It is not that. Actually, you see, the Mayavadis, they think, Brahmavadis, they think that to define that Brahman, it should have opposite characteristics of the Dvandva world. And Prabhupada and the Vaishnava Acharyas point out that this is a flawed argument. For you to define the absolute, you are taking help of the relative. Which means your absolute is not absolute. It is dependent on the relative. And hence it is not absolute. So you cannot take the help of the relative to define the absolute. Absolute has to be absolute on its own. And you have to figure out what it is. Negation of the relative does not become the absolute. Negation of the relative is another relative only. Absolute is absolute. You have to figure that out. What is that absolute? Shastras define that absolute is, yes, is one Brahman, but in Brahman there are taratamya, there are variegatedness, vaishishtya. That is the philosophy that Ramanujacharya explained. He said, this is Advaita. It is Ekam, Advaita, there is no difference. But in that oneness, there is Vaishishtya. Vaishishtya means categories. That is why it is known as Vishishtadvaita philosophy. It is Advaita, one. But in that one, there is Vaishishtya. There is one. That is why Prabhupada quotes this verse from the Katha Upanishad. Chetanas nityo nityana, chetanas chetanana, eko bahunam yo vidadati kama. In that other realm, there is Nitya. Nitya means eternal. Sanatana, that is a characteristic of the spiritual world. It is Sanatana. Nityo Nityana, Chetanas Chetananam. There is Chetana and Chetananam. There is singular and there is plural. So Chetana also there are. And Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kama. One is the provider and supplier, the other one is the receiver. In other words, one has the ability to provide, and the other one has no ability to provide, it only has to receive. The provider is Krishna, and the one who receives is the Jiva. One is independent, another is dependent. There are two realities there. One is the independent reality, another one is the dependent reality. Both of them are Brahman in one sense. That is why Aham Brahmasmi. Another statement in the Vedic literature. So the Vedic literatures have all these statements, how to figure these things out and how to create a harmonious picture of the world, of the creation, of life, and what is after life, all these things. What is it that the Vedic literatures are trying to present? And a full, complete, harmonious picture Srila Prabhupada gives. Actually, this clear articulation by Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada's articulation is supported by all the previous acharyas. At different times they came and they explained different aspects, like Vishishta. Otherwise it is all confusing. So we are very fortunate to get this kind of a complete picture, and then how that spiritual reality exists, and then and it is all explained in the Bhagavad Gita too. And Prabhupada is quoting here that the Lord, when Krishna came here, the foolish philosophers who don't take the help of the Vedic literatures, trying to figure out on their own, they think that, oh, when Krishna came here to demonstrate, to display his spiritual variegatedness. But Krishna came here to demonstrate some of the very elevated spiritual concepts of Rajabhakti, which many Kshiti Viralachara Kadipaya very rarely understood. It is very virala. Even among spiritual concepts, it is very rare. And that's why Krishna says, to understand me tattvataha. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatathamāpi siddhānām kaschin mam vetti tattvataha. Mam vetti tattvataha. To know me in truth is very rare. And Prabhupada has quoted this verse, Avajananti ma mudha. Yesterday we were talking about this. Manushim tanu ashritam. Oh, he has taken a manushim tanu. He has taken a human form. So his activities are also like other human beings' activities. Avajananti ma mudha. They deride me. They don't know me. Parambhavam ajanantam. My Parambhavan, my supreme existence, Ajananto, Mama Bhuta Maheshwaram. I am the Lord of everything that exists, material and spiritual. And everything exists, I am its Lord, and I am distinct from that. But it is my existence, it is my energy. So this whole thing, how to understand these things very nicely, Srila Prabhupada has presented it in English language, simple English language. It was explained by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also, in English and Bengali and in Sanskrit, explained by other acharyas also. But still it required one more final simplification for everyone to understand. Prabhupada did that. Once one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, they were going for a Gaudiya in Calcutta. They were going for a program. Prabhupada was invited by one of his godbrothers to come to their ashram, Gaudiya Math, and have prasadam. So Prabhupada was taking a few devotees and they were going. And so one devotee asked Prabhupada, when we go to the Gaudiya Math, can we buy the books there that are available there? The devotees always this kind of inquisitiveness exists. Prabhupada said, he said a few things. This devotee remembers and recalls memories. He says, actually my Guru Maharaj wrote books, but nobody could understand. And then he said, he wrote books. And then he said, if you want to really buy books, you buy books which were published before 1932. Because after 32 they started changing the words. Gaudiya Math also had the same problem that we are changing the book of the Acharya. See, it happens. Somehow somebody will feel, no, I can change the books. I know. Better than. So those kind of things happen. That's happened in Gaudiya Math also. So Prabhupada said that. And then Prabhupada said, an intelligent disciple will be satisfied with whatever his spiritual master has given him. So Yes, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has written. It's all that, but it is actually, I've heard from devotees who know Bengali, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's writings are very, very, even in Bengali it is not so easily understandable Bengali. And Prabhupada wrote in English, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote in English. We have one book, Bhakti Brahma Samhita. It's so complex, difficult to understand, comprehend. It required one more simplification. And Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, blessed Prabhupada to do that one. All the acharyas blessed him to do this. That is why Prabhupada and his position and his books are all very, very, very special. The clarity that we get from his books and his purports. So that's why we should read, reread and reflect on it. Like that. We'll stop here. Yesterday I took too much time. Today I wanted to end on time. There's one more class and one more problem. One question.
Can we get this quote?
Which one?
Intelligent disciple is satisfied with whatever spiritual master is given.
Okay, it is there in the Veda base. What is the devotee's name who recalls this?
Probably even
I'll try and recall and tell you the name.
Prabhupada, he simplified much more, like 4 books are enough for us.
Yeah.
After devotion, he is telling no need to read so many books.
Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam,
Chaitanya Charitamrita.
not even that, TLC only Prabhupada tell. Teaching
Yeah.
of Chaitanya.
Teachings of Chaitanya
And
is
after devotion.
summary of the
And after of devotion, 4 books are enough.
Yes.
So simplified Prabhupada.
Yes.
One question. When you have 2 prominent acharyas, like Siddhar Swami and Jiva Goswami,
Okay.
in this particular context, both are agreeing on the same point that Brahmaloka referred here
Yeah.
is eternal.
Yes.
But as you may recall, that in first canto, there is a description of the planetary system and annihilation, and there those things are discussed. There, Jiva Goswami says something and supported by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura,
Okay.
but Siddhar Swami says opposite.
Okay.
So how do we reconcile that? And Prabhupada doesn't comment on, because both are giants spiritual, he just leaves as it is.
Yeah.
Spiritual.
So, there are examples. There are instances where if the same original text will be explained by 2 acharyas in slightly different ways. Or could be different, completely opposite ways also. So, academically speaking, in Sanskrit, this is known as Anyapata. Anyapata. Alternate reading. You can read in one way, you can read in another way. Like Akshara Brahma Paramam. This is which chapter? 8th chapter. Right? Because Arjuna asked in the end of 7th chapter, Krishna used some words and immediately Kim tat brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adibhutam cha kim proktam adidhaivam kim uchyate. All these words were used by Krishna towards the end of the 7th chapter. So Arjuna stops and then says, Krishna, what is this? Kim tat brahma? So what is Brahman? What is the self? Adhyatmam, kim adhyatmam? And then Krishna begins to explain in the 3rd chapter, Aksharam Brahma Paramam. And Prabhupada explains here that Brahma refers to the Jiva. And there are some Vaishnava acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti, I'm not too sure. But there are some Vaishnava acharyas who have explained that Brahma refers to Parabrahma.
And there is a context 4.34, na kartitvam na karmani lokas sirjate prabhu na karm phal samyogam swavastu. That prabhu word was a little confusing, so I consulted a senior dude. And Ramanujacharya says this prabhu words means living entity. That's what Prabhupada has followed. But the other place, Madhvacharya says it means Supreme Lord.
Yes.
And not only he says that, you also alternate reading no. He says in this case it can't mean living entity, it has to mean Supreme Lord.
Yeah. So you see, in the tradition of Vedic culture, acharyas, if you are pointing out something, you must establish that the alternates are not true. So that's part of the tradition, and so they present vehemently. There is that other verse, 3rd chapter in the Bhagavad Gita, higher than the mind, higher than the senses is the intelligence, a mind, higher than the mind is the intelligence, and higher than the intelligence is Sa, he.
Lives there.
He lives, Krishna says that. And that high Saha is living entity, Prabhupada explains. There are some acharyas who have explained that higher than that is Kama. Because Krishna was talking about in the context of Kama, how Kama can overpower, how Kama covers up the living entity's knowledge, all that is being explained. So this kind of sometimes acharyas, but whatever it is, the overall conclusion of all these Vaishnava acharyas is the same. There is no difference. And what are those main conclusions? They are known as prameyas. On these points, these acharyas don't differ at all. That is, Parabrahma is Krishna, Vishnu, Jiva is always eternally a servant, and there is a spiritual world, and the way to achieve that spiritual world is bhakti. On these, there are so like this, Baldev Vidyabhushana also writes, these are the 10 prameyas where there is no difference at all between the acharyas. So sometimes in the reading of the Vedic literatures, in the explanations of the Vedic literatures, there may be small differences like that. But again, we should not become too worried about it. We should understand that, yes, there is another verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It is like this. It gives the example of the money, Vaidurya money. If I bring that money and keep it here in front, if I ask him, what is the color of the money you see? He will say, I am seeing it as a blue gem. I'll ask him, can you please tell me how does this gem look? He will say, it looks green. I'll ask you, for me it looks yellow. The Vaidurya money is such that because of that internal reflection and all that, different from different angles, it looks different. So sometimes, this is another example given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sometimes the absolute truth is defined, described differently because acharyas are describing it from different perspectives. And the Supreme Lord is such that He is yellow, green, blue, all can be reconciled, all opposites can be reconciled in that absolute truth. Like that. So, this is one explanation, there are alternate readings, alternate explanation, and although there is maybe differences, but there are certain conclusions on which they do not differ. These are the different alternate ways of reading things. So these are some of the things that
What happens, the reason I ask this question, in the beginning of spiritual life, like how most of us come from science background, science and engineering. So if say I. Irodo, one physics writer was there, and then Rasnik Halliday, and then Indian writer is S.C. Vada. All three, irrespective of whether you in any country or respective country, say same thing. Otherwise one is wrong, other is right. But in case of spirituality, like I read Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is just incident. Because beginning we don't understand that much philosophy. So there is an incident, Mahaprabhu one time planted a mango tree, and immediately mango tree grew up, and so many fruits came up, and fruits were plucked and offered to the Lord. And then fruits after some time vanished. Then there are other books where other acharyas like Chaitanya Mangala, Chaitanya Bhagavata, and as you know, like in the beginning so much enthusiasm will be there, you will so many books you will purchase and read. Although Prabhupada says 4 books are enough, but you will purchase nonetheless. There you will find one of the Chaitanya Mangala, Lochandar Shakuda will tell, that tree would be exactly same, he will tell he planted the tree, grew up and all the fruits were plucked. But tree continued to remain in the courtyard of Srivas Thakura.
That is why.
Because a beginner like me can't identify the spiritual truths, don't have vision of spiritual truth to reconcile. These acharyas differing in they are not consistent. Your faith will start going because faith initially comes from the basic things very big.
So that is why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Bahu Shastre Bahu Vakya Chitta Brahmaya. If you read too many literatures, you will become Brahma. Bahu Shastre Bahu Vakya Chitta Brahmaya. Sadhya Sadhana Shreshta Nahaya Nischaya. What is the sadhana? What is the sadhya? What is the process? What is the end result? You'll never. Sadhana Shastra Shrestha, which is the highest thing. Nahaya Nischaya. You'll never have a definitive answer for all these things. Hence, reading too many books is also not encouraged. Although Vedic literatures have so many books, one has to be very, very advanced to be able to see that. Like the 6 Goswamis, Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipuno Saddharma Samstapako. They could do that one. And that's why if you see Jiva Goswami and his writings and other Goswami, when they bring out something, they quote from so many places. It's really mind-blowing. What all Vedic literatures they were referring to, and they had access to, they put them all, and they were seeing the unity, Saddharma, there is one eternal religion, message of all these things, and how to see that in that way. So, yes, in science, in mathematics, it is very, very like that one definitive way of looking at things. In humanities, in reality, there are multiple ways of looking at things. We must accommodate that. There will be, yes, there can be this way of seeing, there can be, just like in the Supreme Court, an issue, one issue just like this, but this time that we read about in the Sabrimala, whether the women should be allowed or not. I think there were from five judges were there, all eminent judges. 4 of them had one opinion, and the 5th judge didn't have a different opinion. So how do we resolve? In the material world, in a democratic setup, it is the number. So 5 against 1, 4 against 1. So no, they cannot be allowed. So you see how in reality, how to see things. All of them are eminent people. All of them are very intelligent. They are using their mind, they are using their brain. They are trying to understand what is to be done, whether to respect the tradition or to human rights have to be respected. And they have all given their arguments why they think it is like that. It's not just one statement. All of them would have written some 20 pages and then conclude. So it's all available. You can see and study that one and see. There will be differences. So, yes, how to see a certain reality, there will be multiple perspectives are possible. And although acharyas have multiple perspectives, on certain things there is no confusion about it. Like Shankaracharya had a completely different view on certain things. So how do we explain that? That also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains very nicely. It is not Acharya's fault. He was ordained by the Lord to do that. Mayavadam asat shastram prachanna bhaktam uchyate. And he was asked by the Lord to do that one. And he quotes 2 verses from the Padma Purana and says that this is what, it is not your Acharya's fault. Because he was talking in Banaras to all the followers of Shankaracharya. Don't think that I am saying this is your Acharya's fault. It is not Acharya's fault. He was asked to do that one. Because he was bringing a transition from Bhakta Dharma to Veda Dharma. So he had to teach a Prachanna Bhakta Dharma to bring back the Veda Dharma. So he gives this explanation. So like this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's presentation and which was understood by the six Goswamis and presented in their literature and presented further explained by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and then by Srila Prabhupada in English for our understanding. That's why Prabhupada said, this is enough. This much we should read very nicely. And so nicely Prabhupada explained, Bhagavad Gita gives you the science of God. Bhagavatam teaches you love of God. And Chaitanya Charitamrita teaches you how to intensify that love of God. And if you have the good, correct science of God, and you have developed the love of God, and you have developed intensification of that love of God, you can go back to Krishna. Bas, enough. We should be satisfied with that. We should hold on to these words. Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chittete Korya Aikya. His words are enough. I am fully driven. My life is governed by His words. If we hold on to like that, then we are very simple. We'll stop here. There's more classes again in the afternoon. Bhagavatam.